Okay.
Okay. Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
The work session of the Osseo School Board is being conducted in the Media Center of Edenbrook Elementary School, 8925 Zane Avenue North in Brooklyn Park. The work session is being audio recorded. The recording will be made available on the district website within 2 days after the work session has ended. The intent of the school board work session is to allow for school board discussion of topics. Work sessions do not include an opportunity for audience members to address the board. To acknowledge attendance this evening, I'll ask that all present at the table state their name, beginning with, to my left.
Thomas Brooks, school board member.
Aaron Kruger, building principal.
Sarah Mitchell, school board member.
Tamara Grady, she, her, school board member.
Jim Greeley, Enrollment Services Coordinator.
Brian Severson Hall, executive director of community engagement.
Laurel Anderson, Executive Director of Human Resources. Kelly Parpart, Assistant Superintendent of Secondary Schools.
Anthony Patterns, Executive Director of Technology.
Dave Malone, Executive Director of Community Relations.
Steve Fliss, Assistant Superintendent for the elementary schools.
Robin Gonzalez, Director of Learning and Achievement.
Ryan Bass, Assistant Superintendent for Equity and Achievement.
Amy Moore, general counsel.
Heather Douglas, school board member.
Jackie Mosqueda Jones, school board member.
Kim Heil, superintendent.
And I, Tanya Simons, school board member and present. The purpose of the school board work session is to build trust and teamwork, to exchange information, and when applicable, to provide direction in order to facilitate efficient and effective decision-making at regular school board meetings. I'll now ask Dr. Heil for her check-in for this work session. Dr. Heil.
Thank you, Vice Chair Simons, and good evening, Chair Mosqueda Jones and our school board members. We're excited to be here at Edenbrook Elementary. We want to say thank you to Principal Aaron Kruger for inviting us in, even though we were going to come anyway, but for inviting us in to be able to hold our meeting here. So we're going to start out, and Principal Kruger is going to tell us how wonderful his school is.
Yeah, well, thank you, Dr. Heil. I appreciate it, and thank you, school board, for being here this evening. It's quite an honor to have you come into our space and do a meeting remotely from the ESC over here. Dr. Heil told me to keep this short and sweet, so I'm going to try to do that. No, I'm kidding.
I did not say that.
I'm proud to be the principal. This is my 11th year at Edenbrook, and I would say just the 60,000-foot version of kind of who we are is that we still have a community feel to this school. While our community has evolved over the decade plus that I've been here, we really pride ourselves on we always talk about the who we are at Edenbrook, and some of the pillars of that who for us is our connection to our community and our families and recognizing who we serve day in and day out. Some of those pillars are centered around our PBIS work. We're an exemplar school. I think this is 4 years running.
Just saying.
Just saying. We're a nationally recognized school with the AVID program. In fact, we were the first AVID program in this system. We were able to do that because when they changed the rules, you didn't have to have a secondary AVID site in order to be AVID Elementary. So we have every spring, and we've invited folks from here, I think anyway, over the last few years, but we're usually a Midwest showcase school where other districts will send superintendents and leadership from the site district, and even in some cases school board level, to come and check out what we're doing as a model school in the Midwest area. So we're really prideful of that. AVID, for those that I'm sure probably all you're aware, is Advancement via Individual Determination. It's a program that you get into in the secondary level. It's an elective. All kids at the elementary are AVID. So our goal here is to prepare my colleagues who receive our children at Northview predominantly to be ready to keep moving. So we really develop and hone in on some of the skills for students to be great scholars, and more importantly, see themselves in the world beyond elementary, beyond middle school, beyond high school, whatever that world looks like for them and to them. So one of our key pillar items here, a couple of shout outs that I'd be remiss not to bring up. One is actually not connected necessarily to the specific walls of Edenbrook, but just a gratefulness to our facilities and transportation departments in this district. I feel like not the only group, but a group that every year to get a school up and running. Here we are, first part of October, and we've been running around getting things up and going for 30 days, and they are integral, and they have been so giving and flexible of their time. And I feel like every year, when you think it can't get better, those departments surprise me again in our system, and they just show up and are responsive to a person at the site level just trying to operate, right? So shout out to them, and then additionally, just a shout out to the staff here in this building. Having done this, like I said, 24 years, I always get the benefit of standing up when we go and speak at conferences, and I've had the opportunity to do that, and I get to stand up and take credit for work I'm really not doing. So just to honor the fact that it's on the shoulders of the staff that come here every day, that choose to be a part of the Edinbrook work family, choose to connect and be with the families that we serve, and we really mean those words, right? And so just gratefulness for the folks that allow me to get to stand up and talk about the great things we're doing. We obviously feel like we're the best, and we're prideful, and we work hard for that. So,
Did you want to talk about your family engagement rate?
family engagement rate. Well,
Just go ahead, share.
Yeah, no, we do pretty good with family engagement. In fact, a couple of things I would say data points wise. If you all read the Star Tribune article that came out on beating the odds, we're one of the identified schools in Osseo that's beating the odds, and we talk a lot about growth here. Our population shifts quite a bit. The numbers behind us are that, and I don't quote me on this year because I don't have the current numbers, but our story is one that we roll over nearly 50% of our students. Our mobility rate is really high. We tend to bring in kids and out kids frequently. Tends to be that when children come to us, we have to identify maybe some gaps where they're at and move them forward. So we develop a lot of things programmatically around safety nets. So for us to beat the odds and have a high degree of proficiency means that we're doing quite a bit of work around growth for each of our students. We're certainly not perfect, nor have we arrived, and we'll never have that mindset. We'll approach every day as a new day to get better. But we're prideful of that. And then family engagement survey that was last year. Now, when you look at the data, if you choose to look at it, you'll notice if you were to compare Edinbrook to district and state marks, we're substantially higher. Again, I'll bring that back to AVID. We tie our AVID work into family engagement because you really can't have one without the other. So we'll do 4 big events throughout the year. We've already had Set Up for Success that we had. We'll do Wisdom Begins with Wonder, and then we'll do a spring showcase. And I think our last one, I don't know, Brian, you were at what? We probably had 450. Dr. Bass, sorry, we probably had 450
That was a great turnout.
people. I mean, it was big.
Cafeteria was full.
Yeah, so we had a lot of families come in and take some time in the morning to see how that looks. So, and that tends to be our story each time. So it's that's probably why our data suggests that we know a thing or two about connecting with families, and that's good because we want to. So.
Thank you for
Yeah.
being so proud. Any questions for Erin? Principal Kruger?
I don't have a question, but I just drew a connection that I hadn't thought of before.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
No, well, North.
Sorry, Ron.
No, it's a good one. It's a good one. I've every time I've been at Northview, one thing that I've noticed is the student attitudes are just quite different than at some of our other middle schools, and they have this drive independently, and it's like a whole different little. I think it's a hidden gem in our middle schools. A lot of people don't talk about it, and it's always gotten kind of a bad rap for the last several years, but that's not my experience when I go there. But then when I heard you say that most of the kids that go here will move on to Northview, I just made that connection that, oh, you have a totally different program here, and that's probably significantly impacting how students show up when they get to Northview. And I just think that's really cool.
Well, thank you. I'll take the compliment. I know I've got a great colleague at Northview too, and so it's an easy baton pass for me, but thank you.
I just have a question. I'm curious when you're talking about community or family engagement. And did you say in the morning? Was it a morning event? Or
Yeah.
do you try different times of day?
Yep, so the morning event Set Up for Success is all about having families come in and experience how their child begins a day at Edinbrook and what that looks like. We usually shift we don't call it morning meeting here, we call it Circle of Power and Respect. We usually shift that to the morning so that they can be a part of that, and then we say, okay, 9:15, we got to get to business. Time to go. Thanks for coming, right? But we want our parents to be a part of that process and see what every day starts like for their child. So that's a morning event. The Wisdom Begins with Wonder event is done in the evening, and it's really about science themes and high levels of thinking and question asking and working through the process of what it's like to explore something that maybe I don't have all the answers to. So we're trying to engage families together in that process. Those are probably the two biggest curriculum-based types of like pieces that we do. But one's morning, one's evening, and then the showcase tends to be more afternoon, and then the stuff where we bring other schools in. That's the fourth event, and that's usually all day, and we'll not usually have as many parents for that. We'll have a few, and then we have a student leadership panel that will answer questions to other school district superintendents and visitors that come. So it's really all about empowering, and that's our leadership team and student council, which usually is 4th and 5th grade students that we empower to stand up and take on some of that leadership for us. So
That's great.
did that answer the
Yes,
question?
yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you get a chance to go to that evening thing, I went last time and it was.
The Wisdom?
Yeah, pretty amazing.
Did the mayor here last year for the one. I can't remember which event he came to, but it was fun having him here.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you, appreciate it.
You don't have to stay, it's okay.
So that means I should go.
But you can if you want.
It's riveting. This is riveting.
It's an open meeting.
No,
So,
I'm gonna jump back into my watch.
yeah,
now.
please watch that. Thank you. Once again, thank you for hosting, appreciate it. All right, we're gonna move on to our next special presentation. I've generally been trying to get out to different sites every Friday, so one of the sites that I was visiting was the Enrollment Center as well as with ABE that fills the same building. And I was like literally blown away with all the happenings in that one building, because I thought it was just people coming just to register. But it's one-stop servant leadership. So I wanted to share all that wonderfulness with the board today. So I'll let Bryant introduce.
Yeah, so thanks. Good evening, everybody. Excited to have a chance to do a spotlight on the Enrollment Center. I think most everyone knows I direct the community education programs, but I also oversee 3 Fund 1 areas, targeted services and Enrollment Center, and also the foundation. So that's how I'm tied in with Jim. And when we were getting ready Jim's going to really do the presentation, but when we were getting ready, I reflected, and it was actually my first week in this school district 12 years ago that I attended the groundbreaking at the Northwest Family Service Center with Kate McGuire and Kim Riescraft, right? So that space didn't even exist when I started here, Dr. Heil, when you mentioned the one-stop shop, right? So Jim and I were talking about that a little bit on Thursday when we got ready. So I think you're going to get a great flavor of what happens at the Enrollment Center, and we're appreciative of the chance to get to present. So, Jim Greeley.
Great.
Kelly's gonna be right behind.
I'm okay to go over here, right?
Yeah.
Sorry.
All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Jim Greeley, and I run the day-to-day operations over at the Enrollment Center as the Enrollment Services Coordinator with Osceola Area Schools. So thank you, Dr. Hatta, for coming out a few weeks ago and inviting me to be here today to spotlight the Enrollment Center. So a few outcomes for today's presentation. Board members will understand the process of centralized enrollment and also understand the resources, services, and partnerships provided to families. All right, so I'd like to share with y'all what I call the Enrollment Center hype video. This short video is on the Enrollment Center website. I know, nothing spells hype like enrollment. The short video is on the Enrollment Center website and paints a real picture of who we are, where we are, what we do, and who we serve. We have many ways that families can enroll. We offer a lot of flexibility. If a family is looking for that in-person connection, they can certainly come to the Enrollment Center in person, and we can provide the paperwork needed and make copies of the required documents and get the enrollment completed right here at our office. The Enrollment Center is located at the Northwest Family Service Center in Brooklyn Center, close to the intersection of Brooklyn Boulevard and Noble Avenue. Our purpose and goal here every day is to create a welcoming environment for all of our families. We want them to have a place to learn about resources available to them in the district, and also to get them enrolled into school so that they can start their educational journey. We do have all of our enrollment materials and packets available on our district website, and families can fill out the fillable PDFs. They can send it via email, fax, or US mail it to us with the required documents, and then we'll follow up with the family via phone call or email if there's anything else that's needed. Families can enroll for kindergarten online, and eventually all grades, pre-K through 12, will have that same option.
I'm here to help, so it gives me a big sense of pride that they can come here and we can see them from start to end.
We have a really great crew, you know, our co-workers, our colleagues. We are a family, and we just really enjoy coming to work every day.
In disclosure on that, we're actually K through 12 full online enrollment now, not just kindergarten. That was last year, and then we're still phasing that out. So. Okay, so Osseo Area Schools Enrollment Center has been in the Northwest Family Service Center, like Brian mentioned, since 2008. These building partners have joined the space around 2012. Our building partners work closely together to educate and make families aware of the many programs and services available to them. Oftentimes, we are referring or connecting families to the other areas of the building, depending on their needs or interests. We strive to collaborate and be a place where our community and families will feel safe and connected. The building partners here are the Enrollment Center, also Adult Basic Education, ABE, is located on the second floor, which offers their classes for adults, English learner programs, GED, adult diploma services. Also, KidStop is located in the same hallway as the Enrollment Center staff, and they're offering the before and after school age care programs and 4-Star Express, the all-day pre-K program. Hennepin County Human Services Department is located on the second floor, and they provide services like housing and shelter assistance, food assistance, and health insurance. And Community Emergency Assistance Program, CEAP, is on the first floor, and they offer a thrift store, more housing assistance, a fresh food market with delivery available. And I can't forget about our neighbors over at Willow Lane Early Childhood Center, because it's just a short jaunt across the parking lot. I consider them a partner as well. And their, families get connected with them with the early childhood programs, early childhood special education programs, and also early childhood screenings as families come to enroll and engage with Willow Lane Early Childhood Center as well. When you know your why, you'll know your way. And the Enrollment Center Y is a safe and welcoming place for our communities, parents and guardians, and scholars to enroll into school while helping them get connected to resources and services available to them across the entire school district. One of my favorite quotes comes from Josh Schmidt. He works at the Enrollment Center as an English language intake facilitator. And Josh said, "I don't simply help families fill out forms, I help them get started on a path to great education in Osseo Area schools." If there's one thing I want y'all to remember today when I'm done is that the Enrollment Center is much more than just enrollment process and forms. The next slides will provide more detail about centralized enrollment center operations. There are many pieces to enrollment management, but the purpose of time and our outcomes this evening, I'm going to only focus on a few of those. The first is the centralized process. Osseo Area Schools has a centralized enrollment center and process for all schools in the district, including 279 Online. The enrollment center plays a key component in ensuring that all students are properly and safely enrolled into the school district. The enrollment team gathers enrollment paperwork, required supporting documents like proof of residency, birth certificates, photo IDs, previous school records, to name a few. These are reviewed by a number of staff, including administrative assistants, a district nurse, counselor, and a special education building coordinator. If applicable, they are referred to our homeless and foster liaison, special education team, and English learner program. When the enrollment file is completed by the enrollment team, and we have all paperwork and documents, the file is then distributed to the school with all the information in place so that the scholar is ready to learn as soon as they enter the doors. I will be reviewing a few of the benefits of a centralized enrollment process. A centralized process is so important to a large school district like Osseo Area Schools because it provides a consistent and equitable process among all schools, especially as it relates to building capacity and how we are making decisions on space availability in our schools through school choice. A centralized process provides a positive first experience for families, more efficient and timely enrollment. Families are getting the same message and might be enrolling children across many schools in the system, and they only need to come to one place or work with one staff member. In addition, the enrollment center is open year-round and provides support and resources when schools are closed during breaks, non-school days, and summer. Scholars enter school with all components in place so they're ready to learn and school staff can better serve their needs. Decrease wait time and enter school and begin class. The enrollment center is a conduit to other departments, which increases the efficiency. For example, transportation, health services, and student services such as English language and special ed department receive timely data for increased efficiency in providing services for scholars and families. School secretaries, nurses, and registrars have all information needed so that they're ready to welcome the scholar in the building. Barriers are removed to families who may be highly mobile, homeless, foster care, and new to the country. The enrollment process should not delay and keep children out of school, adding to the problem of disparities and equities to our marginalized families. This process ensures that doesn't happen. A centralized process allows the enrollment center to oversee the enrollment options policy 558, and I'll discuss this more later in the presentation. Lastly, it can provide financial savings to the district. Quicker enrollment can mean more funding. In addition, the enrollment center ensures we have updated proof of residency documents and non-resident agreements to capture tuition reimbursements and billing from other school districts. All right, enrollment management. In this slide, I'll briefly review the enrollment types and ways families can enroll in school. These are the most common types of enrollments we process here at the Enrollment Center. Sometimes people just think we just do new enrollments, right? A new family come in, new enrollment. That's not necessarily the case. These are the most common types: new enrollment, in-district transfer, open enrollment from outside the school district, magnet school enrollments, a change of address, which can also mean a change in school, and reversal to home schools. Other types include shared time enrollments, early entrance to kindergarten, PCSE initial evaluations, safe at home, caring treatment transportation, and foster and group home. The Enrollment Center provides flexibility for families to submit their enrollment paperwork, supporting documents to enroll into school. Depending on the family situation, we have options for everyone. Paper enrollment packets are available in person at the Enrollment Center. Packets are translated in 5 languages. Families can also access these packets online and complete and send via email, fax, and US mail. Online enrollment. Through each guardian's parent view account, families can complete their back-to-school forms or enroll students K through 12 into their home boundary school. The pandemic really accelerated this work, and we're currently on phase 3 of the project. We started with just kindergarten last school year. We'll be doing K through 12, well, we are doing K through 12 this school year, and then next year, we'll be doing pre-K 279 online, magnet schools, and school choice families will be able to enroll online as well. So we're working through those phases. To date, for the current school year, about 11,000 families have completed the online enrollment process, which combines the back-to-school forms, annual verification, and new enrollments. About 1,647 new enrollments have been completed online for the 2023-24 school year. This means that about 56% of our new enrollments this school year were completed online. The majority of those new enrollments were kindergarten families. This validates that families are excited about an online enrollment option. Another important part of the Enrollment Center operations is the enrollment options and lottery management process. This process plays an important role to the connection of building capacity, staffing, and overall enrollment numbers. It's also governed by the Enrollment Options State Statute and the Osseo Enrollment Options Policy 558. The procedure applies to any student who wishes to enroll at a school in District 279 other than the school to which they reside. These are admitted on basis of space availability at each grade and school. School choice applications and lottery process opens on approximately October 15th each year, that's next week, for the following school year. Deadline to apply and be considered for the lottery is January 15th. A lottery will proceed if there are more applications than space available. Applications received after the deadline are still accepted and are processed on a rolling basis based on space availability. In January and February, there will be a burst of enrollments for next school year as Enrollment Center approves and processes those lottery approvals.
And Jim mentioned it. I really think the pandemic accelerated our online options. You know, we didn't stop enrolling students during that time, right? So that really, Info Systems, I want to give them credit. They helped us out a lot in that process as well. So it's really a partnership between Enrollment Center and Information Systems Department. But it's good to hear numbers like 56% using that option is pretty amazing. So.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brian. And just a note on this one, the Northwest Suburban Integration School District, the magnet school lottery process timelines are a tidbit different. They have a December 31st priority deadline, and they run two lotteries, and then they send us the wait list of those, and then we fill in the holes based on space availability. So their timelines are a little bit different. This slide represents the members of the Open Enrollment Management Team. The purpose of this team is to manage enrollment options and school choice operations and make decisions on the in-district transfer, open enrollment, and magnet processes each year. In addition, the group will determine which school buildings are and are not accepting additional students based on enrollment capacity and staffing. The Open Enrollment Management Team determines that criteria around space availability, and then the Enrollment Center carries out the process and procedures in the day-to-day work. You have probably heard of the Enrollment Center back-to-school season. If not, this is our very high volume of enrollments during August and September. The purpose of this graph is to give you an idea of the workload and types of enrollments that were processed during the back-to-school season period of August 1st through September 30th. The graph compares the current school year, FY24, in light blue on the left. I know these numbers are hard to read on that, I apologize. And then last school year, FY23, which is the middle row in dark blue, and the FY22 school year in orange on the right. Enrollment types are listed on the horizontal axis: total enrollment, new enrollment, change of address, transfers, and other, which include share time, care and treatment, initial evaluations, those types of enrollments. The numbers you see are the numbers of files coming through the Enrollment Center office. These numbers will correlate with final enrollment numbers and trends that we see on November 1st report. So some findings here is the total enrollments were down slightly compared to last two school years. New enrollments were up slightly compared to last school year. Change of addresses were down from last school year, but more families are engaging in ParentView to update their information and addresses. Each year the data is getting cleaner, and we anticipate that the number of address changes actually decrease over time because that data is getting updated more by families. Transfers were up some from last school year. And I will note on the transfer one, you'll see like in orange in FY22, it was almost double the transfers, and that had a lot to do with the pandemic and 279 online and brick and mortar sites. I won't bring that up, but there was a lot of musical chairs happening, right? So in the approximate 8 weeks of data listed in this chart, the average per day numbers during the back to school season are total enrollments average was 54 per day, and new enrollments average was 31 per day. During the back to school season, we process about 37% of our total enrollments for the school year. For example, in 2022 and 23 school year, the darker blue middle row chart, we processed 2,950 total enrollments during the back to school season, and 8,053 total enrollments were processed that school year, which came up to about 37%. The purpose of this chart is to give you an idea of the total number of new enrollments, which is the green color, in comparison with the total number of withdrawals in the red color at the schools. You can see that from June 9th, 2023 through September 30th, we processed 1,691 new enrollments, and there were 1,648 withdrawals. This comes out to about 43 more new enrollments processed. The data comparison stays pretty consistent through the remainder of the school year. Some withdrawal reasons are families may transfer out of state or country, attend a private school, attend homeschooling, move and enroll into a new Minnesota school district, or just simply change schools to a different public school.
Jim, what was our busiest enrollment day this year during back to school season?
I think we had 131 families come through the door.
And the first day of school was one of our busiest days at the enrollment center, right when folks realize they're not enrolled. Right? So that's a if you want to see a really active day, that's a good day to see it.
Yeah, and you would think with online enrollment that volume would come down, and it's just we're still seeing the same numbers consistently over the last 5 years as far as how many families actually come in person to the enrollment center, because they're not just coming there to enroll, and that's what this next slide will lead us into as well. So resources, services, and partnerships. So bear with me on this one. I'm going to be talking a little bit about each program one at a time. But the purpose of this slide is to help you understand that the Enrollment Center is much more than just enrollment, right? We talked about that. Occasionally we will call ourselves a one-stop shop for families. These are just a few examples of ways that the Enrollment Center engages with families and provides additional resources and services. Osseo Area Schools has a partnership with Northwest Family Resource Collaborative. This partnership helps fund 2 programs located at the Enrollment Center. The first is the Northwest Immunization Clinic. The clinic offers free immunizations to children and to adults 19 years and older if they have no health insurance or have health insurance that does not cover vaccines. Minnesota is a no shots, no school state. The clinic helps scholars get the immunizations needed in order to start school right away. Secondly, the Regional Family Advocate Program provides resources, information, referrals, and support to families who may need help with food, clothing, health insurance, medical, mental health, and dental services. The Family Advocate at the Enrollment Center will often connect families with SEEP or Hennepin County in the building and works closely with our homeless liaison to support our families. Next on the list is the community education programs. Early childhood family education and KidStop staff are at the Enrollment Center to support families looking for additional information or to register for before and after school age care, pre-K, early childhood screening, and other early childhood classes. Additionally, those adults looking for adult basic education programs like GED adult diploma and other adult classes are directed to their office on the second floor. The collaboration between the Enrollment Center and our community education programs is extremely valuable to our families and our internal programs. Next, the Northwest Integration School District and the Enrollment Center works closely together and allows families to enroll into one of our magnet-themed schools or programs. This choice programming offers comprehensive, high-quality thematic curriculum intended to attract diverse learners. The application, lottery management, and transportation services start at the Enrollment Center. I've mentioned SEEP and Hennepin County programs previously. I just want to highlight one example of how our building partnerships has impacted families directly. This back-to-school season, SEEP and the Enrollment Center partnered a program called Learn Strong. All new scholars enrolling could receive a free backpack filled with supplies and healthy snacks. Because of the partnership, we were able to provide 450 backpacks to families and scholars in just a few weeks. Located at the Enrollment Center is the Homework Starts with Home, the next one there at the bottom. Homework Starts with Home Northwest program. This is a partnership between Hennepin County, the YMCA, and Osseo Area Schools to provide rental assistance, case management, and attendance and academic improvement for scholars and their families who are at risk of losing their housing. This program offers resources and supportive services to families experiencing housing instability. We are currently in year 2 of the program and are servicing 71 households and 256 individuals. And it's all about homeless prevention, so we want to keep them stable in their housing before they become homeless, and then we deal with all the problems that come along with that, right? So it's been very successful in year 2. As many of you may know, there are multiple preschool options across the district. This can be overwhelming for families. Osseo Area Schools offers both tuition-free and fee-based programming ages 3 to 5. At the Enrollment Center, we try and simplify this process for families and provide them with the information about each option and the timeline and registration process that goes along with it. Whether it's 4-Star Express through KidStop, pre-K option through early childhood, family ed, or if we're enrolling into our voluntary pre-K tuition-free half-day option in our schools, at the Enrollment Center staff will connect the family accordingly. It's an everyday conversation we have. And it's just getting them in the spot that's right for them, and we don't care which one. The next item on the list is the EL, the English Language Services and Language Support. When enrolling, students that speak a language other than English, born outside of the U.S., or if a parent or guardian needs an interpreter, they are referred to our EL department. EL staff at the Enrollment Center will meet with the family and determine if an assessment or supports are needed. In addition, the Enrollment Center works closely with families who need extra language support through the enrollment process. Staff on site are fluent in multiple languages, including Spanish and Hmong. We also use the language line and have our paper enrollment packets translated into 5 languages. Our online enrollment program can translate the experience into most languages. The last 2 years during our back-to-school season, we have worked closely with the EL program to provide multilingual specialists available on-site to help families enroll and answer questions they may have about the process. This has also been a great resource for connecting our families with the multilingual specialists and building a positive relationship with them before school even begins. Next, the Enrollment Center Homeless and Foster Liaison supports families who may be in a temporary living situation and who may qualify for McKinney-Vento Act, which provides homeless and highly mobile scholars with certain rights so they have access to all the same opportunities. like the ability to go to school no matter where they live and how long they have lived there, receive transportation to and from their school of origin, and enroll into school immediately without the required documents. Transportation supports are provided at the enrollment center during the back-to-school season in August and September. The enrollment and transportation teams work closely together all year long. The connection between enrollment and transportation procedures is one of the most asked about services at the enrollment center. Lastly, Osseo Area School District is one of the few metro districts who are student and exchange visitor program certified and can enroll students coming in the U.S. with an F1 visa. These enrollments allow more international scholars to enroll into our schools, and they also pay cost of tuition for that enrollment. So that's separate from like the J1s at the schools working with those organizations. This is students coming on an F1 visa. There are many other programs and services that we provide, but I'm going to leave it at that. But I think that gives you just a glimpse at some of the things we do at the Enrollment Center in regards to supports and services. So with that, I want to thank you all for allowing me to highlight the Enrollment Center work and for allowing me to speak on behalf of our amazing team out at the Enrollment Center. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. Do you have any questions for? They do a lot. Jim, do you? Go ahead.
I was going to say, I would just like to highlight, having worked in several systems, and having kids that attend another school district, centralized enrollment is not a common practice. In many, and I would say most school districts, your enrollment process goes through your school. And if you have an elementary, a middle, and a high school, you need to go to each one of those schools to enroll. And they don't have all the wraparound services like we get to offer here. So if things get slowed down, they might not have interpreters, you might have to call somebody from the district office to help process through things. So it is an amazing opportunity of what I've been able to observe coming into Osseo and that great complete service that Jim described.
Jim, do you still have early childhood screeners there in August to catch incoming families?
We do not. We have an early childhood family ed staff member that is there to get the family connected with setting up an appointment. So she is there to do that.
Cool.
And I just learned today they are doing early childhood screenings in the adult basic ed space on 3rd floor, which is news to me. I thought that was cool.
You wouldn't believe the places I've done early childhood screening.
We also go out to the schools once school starts for kids that weren't able to get screening right away. So we do other services. Yeah, I think, I do want to say, I hope you got a flavor of the number of services that they offer at the Enrollment Center. And I always say, well, kudos, of course, to Jim and his team, but also kudos to Kim Riescraft and Kate and other people who had the wisdom to think of this, what it could be like to have a spot where people could come in and get enrolled, and you find out they've got food instability and they've got some housing instability, and you walk
It's
them
on
down
a bus line, right?
Yep, and you get them to SEEP and you get them a couple sacks of groceries and make sure they are getting off on the right foot. So I think Jim just did an amazing job of explaining all that goes on during that time. Our staff, we work with HR. Our staff work much longer than 8 hours a day during the back-to-school season. So we have agreements on their time off and how they get paid during that time, because we simply couldn't process this many enrollments that quickly without that. And then we do actually have a condo association board for this campus, comprised of Hennepin County, SEEP, and Osseo area schools. Myself and Dale Carlstrom are our school district representatives for the condo board to make sure all the expenses and operations of that building take place too. That's a part of this. So you cannot get a better coordinator than Jim Greeley, by the way, to do this work. So it was amazing.
Thank you, Brian.
You're welcome.
I don't have a question, but I would just say, as a parent who's been through the process with multiple kids, getting them enrolled in the district all at the same time. It was a long day, but we got everything done in one day. I didn't have to go anywhere, I didn't have to come back. It wasn't the same as when I had enrolled my first daughter before the enrollment center had opened. That was a runaround. It took me like 3 weeks to get her enrolled, to do all the different things. And having the on-site nurse to get up to date on vaccinations, like literally one-stop shop. It was really incredible and convenient when traveling with like toddlers and preschoolers who are special ed is extremely challenging. So it was really nice, and everybody was like really sweet, and having my two kids who had special needs getting enrolled for early special ed programming were just like bouncing off the walls. Everybody was like, "Oh, you're so cute," and just like, "Here's a coloring book," and like it was just very welcoming. When normally, as a parent in a situation like that, it's extremely stressful, and you feel like everybody's judging you, and like it was not that way. So it was a really good experience as a parent going through it. So I'm sure that it's continued to be a good experience for so many of our families. Thank you.
And it's also cool that you're so close to the Early Childhood Center at Willow Lane. I remember walking families over there. I used to work at Willow Lane. I remember walking families over there to enroll when they got diagnosed or needed to be in special ed. Yeah, it's a cool thing.
Did we build a parking ramp too? Or was that there?
That was before my time. When did that parking ramp? Yeah, it was.
Just curious. Right. Thank you, Jim.
All
We
right,
did it.
thanks, Jim.
Thank you for coming, Jim. All right, we're going to keep moving here. So, members of the board, you may recall last year, we're going to get ready to review our Vision Card E. And as we presented last year, we presented the baseline data that was collected from each of our 5 strategic directions. So this year, we're going to shift over and we're going to engage in comparison data. So this looks like comparing last year's baseline data to this year's progress data. So showing the early influence of our high priority initiatives from our operational plan on the key metrics that are going to be identified. So at this time, I'll let Dr. Bass introduce his team.
All right, thank you, Dr. Heil, Chairman Skada Jones, Vice Chair Simon, members of the board. Here we go again with year 2 of presenting our vision cards. I want to acknowledge our team that has worked very hard behind the scenes to ensure that our data is as accurate as possible in terms of what we're populating in the cards. So I want to thank Robin Gonzalez, our Director of Learning and Achievement, Jenna John, Shoy Aristad, and Tom Watkins, our Data and Assessment Coordinators. And then also with us this evening in the audience, cheering them on, is Gal Thor, Data Specialist. So thank you for joining us this evening. As Dr. Heil mentioned, this is our year we shift. Last year we established our baseline data for each of the 5 cards. This year we start to look at, okay, so last year was year 1 in implementing the operational, the high priority initiatives in our district operational plan. So what's the early influence that we can observe of those efforts on the achievement metrics that we've identified for this card? The baseline data really gave us a snapshot of here's our current reality as a system, right, post-COVID. And now we're starting to see as we climb out of that. And so I'll pause there. So to set the stage for this vision card, just to kind of just get us acclimated again to the actual direction, the statement, the definition, the mindful critical questions, and you can see this alignment with the data. I'm going to just review them. Strategic Direction E states to address, acknowledge, and reduce systemic disparities, barriers, and inequities as we lead, develop, and align our district towards continuous improvement. Our definition statement for Strategic Direction E for the vision card is that we're seeking to establish an organization committed to continuous improvement, that it is deliberate in its ongoing effort to improve all elements of the organization by monitoring the inputs, the processes, and outcomes so that the outcomes of its members exceed expectations. So that's our definition statement. The 2 mindful critical questions for our data that are populated in the vision card include how might we implement a regular, consistent process used to evaluate our practices, policies, and people that prioritize scholar confidence, courage, and competence. Our second mindful critical question is, how do our stated values align with improvement measures and resource allocation? So each vision card provides us with an opportunity for increased transparency in reporting our progress, the impact of our initiatives on each strategic direction. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Robin and the team to present Vision Card E.
Perfect. So our outcomes for this evening are to receive information on comparison data for the high priority initiatives for strategic direction E, and understand alignment of the operational plan to the vision card data collection. And one of the things I want you to keep in mind as we're going through the vision card is last year when we set the baseline and then we set the goals for the vision card, we did our best to estimate and figure out what they would be. We're going to continue to watch that as we go along to make sure that we're meeting the goals and that they're realistic and rigorous at the same time. But we know that there's going to need to be some adjustment. So vision cards serve as our critical data points toward the realization of the desired daily experience of our students, of our scholars, our families, and our staff. And vision cards measure the district's success in achieving the strategic directions. They set ongoing goals for performance and continuous improvement. The alignment to our to the district's 3-year operational plan is on the slide here. And you're going to hear some of the things that were already talked about today. Because as we're talking about the implementation work, you can see online enrollment that Jim Greeley just spoke to. The learning work initiatives in the district 3-year operational plan for the 2023-24 school year are most closely aligned to strategic direction is the application of research and evidence-based practices from the Instructional Leadership Academy and the Principal Support Academy. And we use that information and the research that has been done to redesign their experience for what our site leaders and our district leaders receive for professional development. So we're piloting this year a redesign of the professional learning, and so the learning sessions will be focused on, one session will be learning a month and really just deep into learning what it's like to be an instructional leader and what kind of support they need as instructional leaders. Another meeting will be held monthly just on the operations of learning about the enrollment center and learning about state assessments and those pieces. And then there's a third meeting each month that is about, it's a professional learning community or professional learning teams, as we call them, and really digging in deep to a problem of practice at their site that they want to investigate and get better at. In the implementation work for strategic direction E, you can see the district vision cards that we're starting to implement but continuing to learn about, and also the online enrollment that Jim Greeley spoke to, and then recruitment and retention efforts that continue. There are 5 indicators for strategic direction E: leadership and continuous improvement review, staff recruitment and retention, achievement of state standards, intervention impact, and a new one this year is the social emotional learning curriculum impact. On the screen now is a graphic that you have seen many times, but it helps kind of establish what we're looking at tonight. And so from this graphic, you can see the 3 levels of data. And today we're going to be talking about satellite data, that really high level of data that talks about our progress towards achieving our district mission, but it doesn't really give us the deep information that we need in order to change programs at the site level. That comes when sites engage in looking at the patterns, and then we help them and provide support that we'll be talking about later to kind of dig down and get to that map data and the street data so they can really impact the systems at their site. Tom will take us through the first indicator.
Thank you. So indicator E1 is a process indicator. So that's focused on staff actions and implementation efforts to influence student outcomes. The data used to measure this indicator came from the Epimetrics survey, which provides a quick and meaningful assessment of how the district currently rates in the areas of diversity, equity, inclusion, and cultural competency. The equimetric survey was administered to staff across the system in May and June this year. And for each question, staff chose responses ranging from 1 to 10, with 7 to 10 indicating agree or strongly agree, and 1 through 6 indicating neutral, disagree, or strongly disagree. And for this indicator on card E, there's 2 scales or groups of questions that were used from the survey, alignment and leadership. Although the equity scale was reported as part of card E last year, this scale has since been moved to card A. The percentage of staff that answered agree or strongly agree was averaged across the questions in each area. So with an increase of 5% on the alignment scale and an increase of 4% on the leadership scale, indicator E1 has improved from the baseline or yellow performance level to the progress or green performance level in the vision card table. There was an increase of 3% or more on each question on the scale as well. The next slide has the questions. Here we can see the scales used to measure indicator E1 and the questions on each scale. So alignment incorporates resource allocation and encouragement of staff to support diversity, equity, inclusion, and cultural competency, and 67% agreed or strongly agreed with these questions. The scale of leadership includes the authenticity, understanding, ownership, and inclusiveness of leaders when it comes to individual differences and diversity. And 66% of staff agreed or strongly agreed to these questions.
I'll pick up here, and looking at E2, we have a process indicator. In order to capture our progress on ensuring staff are representative of our scholars and families, a proportion of staff of color is reported. So during the 22-23 school year, 16.3% of staff identified as persons of color, and this was up from 14.9% in 2022. And this moves us into that progress range for our goal setting. The rate of retention of staff of color saw a 3% decrease from 22 to 2023. An additional data point we've included for this indicator is the question from the equimetric survey, where 68% of staff respondents stated they agreed or strongly agreed that the district is seeking diversity in their hiring practices. And this was a 5% increase from 2022, and so that moved us from the baseline to the progress goal range as well. So here we can see those results in greater detail. As work has continued on recruitment and retention, our percentage of licensed staff of color has more than doubled over the past 11 years. Additionally, the rate of growth within our non-licensed staff of color group has outpaced our scholars of color growth rate from the 2019 school year to present. Our scholars of color enrollment data is shown there below, just to provide some additional context to our staff data. On this slide, we can see our retention rate by staff group and then by all staff of color, shown there in that top box or table there. We can see an increase of 8% in the rate of retention among our licensed staff of color. The decrease in the year-over-year overall comparison was impacted by staff turnover in the non-licensed and administrators of colored groups. The table below that shows the percentage of new hires by group over the past 11 years. During the past 6 years, the average rate of new licensed staff of color hires was significantly higher than the first 5 years, and that was an average increase of about 4%. The same trend was true among our non-licensed staff of color, which saw an approximate 14% average increase from those first 5 years to the last 6 years in that trend. 2023 was a standout year in the rate of administrators of color hired at 68.75%. That was the highest of any year.
Okay, so E3 is an outcome indicator with 7 metrics. In 6 of the 7 metrics, to ensure equitable representation of groups, we're reporting on the median percentage of racial and ethnic groups that are reported. These 7 metrics were selected as the best indicators of our success in terms of meeting grade level standards and demonstrating that gap closing growth. These are MCA proficiency in reading and math, MCA progress in reading and math, access for EL's progress, and FastBridge A reading and A math growth. So our MCAs, our Minnesota Comprehensive Assessment in reading, are given to students in grades 3 through 8 and 10. And then our grades 3 through 8 and 11 in math. Proficiency is defined as students meeting or exceeding the state standards on the respective MCA subject tests, so reading, math, and science. And we can see that we moved from 38 to 36% on the MCA reading proficiency rate. And this follows the state level trend in terms of proficiency, which also decreased by 1% overall. We saw a 4% increase in math proficiency, which put us just 1% short of that progress level, or that green color-coded category. The next 2 metrics focus on progress within reading and math, which is defined by the state as students maintaining or improving in their achievement level from spring to spring. The median MCA progress rate in reading was 52%, which was color-coded as orange as being a point of concern. For additional context, at the state level, the median percentage of the same groups making progress was 52%. And they saw a 2% decrease as well year over year. The median MCA progress rate in math was 46%, which continues to be within our baseline range. The state trend was similar on this measure, moving from 49% to 46% in 2023. So we saw a decline, and the state saw an almost similar decline in all those same metrics. The access for EL's progress, or ELP metric, is also an accountability measure that MDE has developed, and it's based on the access assessment that's given to our students receiving EL services. It's used to measure the average progress made by English learners toward their individual growth targets. So the way we interpret this, or these percentages, is that scholars receiving EL services made it 50% of the way to their individual growth targets in the 2023 school year. Statewide, scholars receiving EL services made it 47% of the way to their targets during that same time period. Scholars in grades 2 through 9 are assessed on our FastBridge A Math and A Reading assessments during the fall, winter, and spring. And these metrics show the students who made typical or better growth from fall 2022 to the spring of 2023. Again, the median percentage of the racial and ethnic groups are reported here. And for the 22-23 school year, the median typical growth from fall to spring on the A reading assessment was 45%. In the same school year, 45% of scholars made median typical growth from fall to spring on the A math assessment as well. And this rate places the metric within that range of concern.
This is a question, please.
Yeah.
We'll go back. So on the gray columns on the right, the 2019, 2020, 2021, were those the scores in the spring? Because the 2022 you said were the fall, and the 2023 are the spring. So when they become the gray categories, are they the fall or the spring number?
So for FastBridge, are you talking about? Or
all the way across?
Yep, so the MCA proficiency and progress ones are looking at spring or spring to spring, depending on the metric. And then access is just looking at that one time a year that we give our access assessment. We get those results in early spring. And then our Fast Bridge is looking at fall to spring growth.
So they're different.
Yeah, they're a little bit different, but they're all within about the same school year.
Thank you.
Yep. So, on this table, we can see the data for our MCA reading and math metrics. So those proficiency and progress metrics that we looked at on the previous slide, but this is broken down at that student group level. The student groups highlighted in the green boxes are the percentages that are being used to calculate the median that's reported in the vision card. So the groups with the highest percentages across all 4 of these metrics, you can see were students who identified as multiracial, Asian, or white. And the overall results in the table above indicate higher levels of achievement and progress in reading than in math. Here we can see the rates of scholars who made that typical growth, as we saw in the Fast Bridge metrics, by student group in both reading and math and for the last 2 school years, so the 21-22 and the 22-23 school years. Typical growth, again, is defined as making growth at the 50th percentile or better when compared to national norms. We can see that in reading, the group with the highest rate of making typical growth for students who identify as American Indian at 51%, and students who identify as Hispanic at 49%. In math, students who identify as Asian have the highest rate of making typical growth at 52%, followed by students who identify as Hispanic and white, both at 46%. The chart on the bottom shows the percent of students who met their ELP target. So again, that's that access assessment target. And
For students receiving EL services.
it's an access assessment that's given to students receiving EL services. So this is showing by race and ethnicity again. And the American Indian and Pacific Islander groups were too small to report, unfortunately, having fewer than 5 students in each group. But for of the students represented there, or the student groups, I should say, Asian students have the highest rate of meeting their progress target at 43%, followed by students who identify as Hispanic at 31%. Here in E4, we have another outcome indicator, and we can see 2 metrics tied to intervention impact. And these are ADSIS Reading and ADSIS Math. ADSIS is a state-funded program that's designed to provide scholars with additional academic or behavioral support with the goal of reducing inappropriate referrals to special education services. So for this indicator, we have 2 years of data represented. And of the students who participated in ADSIS Reading during the previous school year, which was 769 students, 53% made aggressive growth or exited the intervention. So when they exit, that means that they got to grade level. Typical growth is considered approximately 1 year of growth, and students in the intervention need to make better than typical growth or aggressive growth in order to close that achievement gap and master grade level standards. So because of this, the metric only includes that aggressive growth or exit.
And the grade levels on this is, grade levels?
This would be K through 9. The ADSIS Math intervention results, similar to the ADSIS Reading program, include students who participated were assessed on the Fast Bridge A-Math in fall and spring, and there were 549 students who participated in the ADSIS Math program, And of those who participated and had both assessments, 36% made that aggressive growth or exited.
And ADSYS math is kindergarten through 8th grade.
What's the assessment? What are we using as an assessment?
We're using FastBridge.
FastBridge.
Yep. Delta Spring Growth.
Thank you.
Yep. On this slide, we see these metrics segmented by student race and ethnicity and the number of students who received ADSYS math or reading services. In that box below, you can see the N sizes. So as a reminder, those who participate in ADSYS are most struggling learners. Most students who receive services earn a score that's placing them at high risk for needing intervention based on our FastBridge screeners. And these students also tend to be well below grade level in terms of mastery of state standards. So students who receive reading services and identify as Hispanic or white had the highest rates of aggressive growth or exit from the program at 59% and 58%. And then students who received math services and identify as white had the highest rates of aggressive growth or exit at 48%. And this was closely followed by students who identify as Asian at 45%. And last but not least, we have E5, which is a new metric for the 22-23 school year that centers the impact of our recently adopted SEL curriculum at both the elementary and secondary levels. The adopted curriculum, just as a reminder, at the elementary level is Harmony SEL and Character Strong at the secondary level. The measure used to evaluate the impact of our SEL curriculum is the Social, Academic, and Emotional Behavioral Risk Screener, also known as MySavers, much easier name, which are both assessments within the FastBridge platform. On the MySavers assessment, students in grades 2 through 12 are completing scales about social, academic, and emotional behaviors. The three scales are interrelated with the CASEL framework for competencies. The 23-24 school year is the first year all students in grades K-12 will be required to take this screener. However, there are many schools who were administering the screener in previous years. So the 22-23 school year is being used as that baseline year, as approximately 2,250 students completed the MySavers during both the fall and the spring assessment windows. And this ended up being a large enough sample to use as baseline data and as a basis for goal setting. The metric the vision card uses is the median of the low risk rate across our race and ethnicity categories. And it's based on the spring assessment, knowing that those students also had to have a fall assessment result so that they would have had the benefit of a full year of experiencing our SEL curriculum.
So even though K-12 could have done the assessment, there wasn't enough of a high school to do a baseline?
Yeah, exactly.
Really?
So at the middle school level, the median of the student groups was 79%, and the median was 78% at the elementary level. And like I said, that will change next year as we implement it, grade for every grade, we'll have data. This chart breaks down the district level results by race and ethnicity. And again, these are the rates of students at low risk in the spring of last year who also had a fall score. The rates were among students the rates were highest among students who identify as white at 92% and students who identify as multiracial at 83%. As I mentioned earlier, the MySavers assessment or screener asks students to complete a self-assessment on 3 different scales or groups of related questions. And these scales pictured here are emotional, academic, and social. The emotional scale measures students' ability to regulate internal states, adapt to change, respond to stressful or challenging events. And the academic scale measures the skills necessary for students to be prepared for, participate in, and benefit from academic instruction. The behavior scale measures students' ability to understand social norms, empathize, and understand the perspective of others. On the left side of the slide, we can see the district level results on these three scales, with 85 and 84% of students rating themselves at low risk on the social and academic scales. And we can also see that 25% of students rate themselves as low risk on that emotional scale.
Yeah, thanks. So this is new data that we just received, and this is actually data that, last week, right? And this is data that Aaron Kruger was talking about earlier when he was talking about the article in the Star Tribune about beating the odds. So this is brand new, and we haven't reported on this at a system level before. We have reported on it, sites have looked at their own data. So this data is based on the knowledge that there's a long-standing and well-documented connection between a school's poverty rate and the achievement on standardized tests. And to account for the impact of poverty, the Star Tribune used a statistical analysis called a linear regression to compare each school's proficiency rates in math and reading to what it was expected to achieve based on its poverty. The slide that you're seeing represents our schools that are meeting or exceeding the expectations in reading and math. In reading, 2 out of the 4 high schools met the expectation, and 2 out of the 4 high schools exceeded the expectations. That's all 4 of our high schools. All 5 of our middle schools met the expectation in reading, and in reading, and in elementary, 11 of the 18 met expected proficiency rate, and 5 exceeded the expected proficiency rate.
Robin,
Yeah.
can you clarify what the 4 high schools are?
Pardon?
Can you clarify
Sure.
what the 4 high
Yes,
schools or which one's missing?
279 online.
Okay.
Yeah, so the 3 brick and mortar schools.
Okay.
Yeah. And so 279 online I broke down there, so that it's included in elementary, in middle school, and in high school. In math, 2 out of the 4 of our high schools met the expectations, and 3 of our middle schools met the expectations. And in elementary, 9 of the 18 sites met the expected proficiency, and 9 of our elementary sites exceeded their expected proficiency, so half and half. On the bottom of the slide is the link to the article that you have access to. In that article, there is a tool that explains how the metrics they came up with the metrics and how they did it, the study. And then also there's a tool that you can click on, and you can find any school in the state of Minnesota and find out how they either met or exceeded their expected proficiency. Oops, I'm not moving from consent. This is an example of a high school, Osseo Senior, that is beating the odds in reading and meeting the expectations in math. The expectations for reading proficiency was 41%, and Osseo Senior High's actual proficiency rate was 53%, which is 3% higher than the state average proficiency rate. Northview Middle School is the next. Northview Middle School is the next on the slide, which we were talking about earlier. And Northview is one of our middle schools that is meeting the expected proficiency rate in both reading and math. To exceed the proficiency rate, they determine what your proficiency rate is, and then if you exceed it, you're 10 points above what their expectation was, and if you are below expectation, you're 10 points below what they expected you to do. One of our elementary schools that is both meeting, both exceeding in both reading and math is Cedar Island. And Cedar Island is exceeding in reading by 11 percentage points and 21 percentage points in math. And another example of an elementary school that is exceeding in both reading and math is Fair Oaks. In reading, their proficiency rate was 12% over what was expected, and in math, they exceeded the expected proficiency rate by 24 percentage points. So our next steps as we move forward and think about this vision card and how we can work to report and be more transparent in our process. So we're going to continue to revise and refine the data that closely aligns with the strategic direction E. An example of that is including the social and emotional learning data this year. And we're going to help sites identify patterns by using map and street data to reduce achievement disparities. One of the tools that we are going to be using with sites is the equity transformation cycle that I'm going to talk about in a minute. And sites are learning how to use the equity transformation cycle as they're working through their e-team seminars. So they're having some practice time there and then bringing it back to their sites to practice there. This is what the equity transformation cycle looks like. And it is a process that centers street data. And so you use the satellite data and the map data to kind of indicate a pattern that you want to dig down deeper in and find out what the cause is. And then you use that you use student voices by interviewing students and teachers, and usually the students and teachers that are most marginalized in the system, to really listen deeply and hear their experiences in school and what they believe to be true in the processes that they're engaging in. And then you use that information to re-examine and kind of reimagine what current practices could be and should be, and then align those practices to changes and move forward with those changes. And then you go through that whole cycle again. And one of the unique things about that equity transformational cycle is you do this in partnership with the stakeholders in your site. So we want students to be engaged in it, we want families to be engaged in it, we want teachers to be engaged in it, and really use that process to dig deep, because without knowing those stories that are underneath the disparities that exist, we can't move and change those practices. So that is the end of our presentation.
All right, board members, you have questions?
I just have a question on the MySavers, the low risk, on that page 35. Can you help us understand what is low risk or high risk, or what exactly is that defining?
So low risk is meaning that they're at low risk for needing intervention in that area. And there's 3 categories. There's low risk, some risk, and high risk for as a potential result from the MySavers. And so what we're reporting there are just the median rates of the low risk student groups.
And what types of interventions, like?
So we have tier 2 interventions, right?
Mhm.
And I'll let Robin
Yeah,
talk more
and
about
so this year we're piloting some tier 2 interventions that align with both of our social and emotional learning programs. So one of them that we're going to be using is called tier 2, Character Strong, and that's the one for secondary, which is really unique to have a social emotional learning intervention program in secondary that is accessible to all of the teachers, and students can engage in that. The other thing that I'm not sure that we said, but we had talked about, is the MySavers program is really self-reporting, so the students are choosing their own answers so it's no one deciding for the students how they should be feeling or how they would answer.
Except for kindergarten and first grade.
Except for kindergarten and first grade. And that's this, we call it the Savers, just without the line.
Do parents opt into this assessment, and are they provided with the results?
That's a good question. We do not have parents opting in to this assessment at this point. They can opt out, and results are provided at conferences.
Just to clarify, are parents and caregivers notified that their student will be participating in the assessment?
We did not send out a notification piece. The teachers at the site, and the sites often send out, these are the assessments, it's on our district website. But
So,
that we can do-
I mean, that would
yeah.
make it challenging to opt out if
Yep.
you're not being told it's happening.
We can absolutely inform.
Robin,
Yeah.
can you maybe speak to the bigger question of opting in and opting out of the
Assessments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, anything that they receive throughout the day?
So that's a good question. So yes, in curriculum-wise, parents can opt out of any area of curriculum that they would like to, or that they choose to. And the same with assessments, and we have the opt-out pages on the district website, and every assessment that comes up, that's shared. It was not shared with Sabres, so that we can fix. Right, Sabres assessment is happening for this fall in about a week or two, so we can do that ahead of time because it wasn't required last year, and I don't know what sites did because it was an individual choice, but we can do that at a system level. Now, one of the reasons that you don't test Sabres until the middle of the school year, or I'm sorry, after 6 weeks, is that you want students to get comfortable so they really have an idea of how to answer those questions when they're in their community and in their classroom.
Do they do it once or then in the spring too?
So we're requiring this year to do it once in the fall and then once in the spring, and several sites have also done it in the mid-year time because they want that data for
They're doing it
students.
like the A reading?
The reason why,
That's school choice.
the reason why I was curious because there's mental health related questions, and I thought by law we were required to notify parents. That's just why I'm curious. I'm
Yeah,
like, I'm
I
not
think-
advocating
I
for opting out.
Yeah, yeah.
I would say the SABRE assessment is part of the U of M assessment design that came out of Fastbridge Reading, Fastbridge Math, and they developed the SABRE's assessment as well. So it's all in that Fastbridge suite. And I would say that if you think about what's in the SABRE's, it's almost like a subset of what happens on the Minnesota Student Survey on a every other year basis around how students perceive showing up prepared and ready to engage with the school community and to participate within the classroom space. There's really kind of a focus around what happens in that assessment.
Yeah, and the Minnesota Student Survey parents are notified.
Yeah.
And the questions that you see on the screen are exactly the questions that students receive. So we can absolutely make that happen.
Looking at the scores and standards and achievement, there's been a lot of dialogue on whether or not opting out is affecting the validity of the results. Do we have that concern in looking at these results?
We have the information, I believe, in the monitoring report that talks about how many opted out. It's always a question of who's opting out and when they're opting out, but we haven't seen a decline in our scores based on that or increase. So our scores have remained pretty stable over the last few years.
I have a somewhat related question. When we're talking about schools that have high mobility, how do those get categorized? How do those scores get categorized when the student has either left our system or hasn't arrived to our system until after these assessments have occurred?
So, speak to that one. We report only scores where a student was enrolled in our district by October 1st.
Okay.
So then they kind of benefit our curriculum for the full year.
Okay. If they leave though, are they also still included?
I don't believe they are, I think they are for graduation rates.
They are for graduation.
But not for
Not
assessments.
for assessments.
Okay. Thank you.
Sarah, did you have a question?
No,
Oh, thank you.
I have a couple of questions. On the access tests, the target, is that the target for the year, or is that target to exit?
That is the target for the year.
For the year, okay. What is the overall retention of staff compared to the retention of our staff of color? I just kind of want to know if,
I don't have that off the top of my head.
does it,
Control
like
Could you just-
anecdotally, do you think it's similar or?
it's not worse for our staff with color than it is for all of our staff.
Okay.
And it depends dramatically on the type of position. We have more turnover in general for our hourly staff
Right.
than we do for our salaried staff.
Yeah, I was looking at the non-licensed, and that was a much higher, a much lower retention, and so I thought that probably is common amongst the whole.
Correct.
Okay, just wanted to check on that. So on the ADSETS interventions, do we have kind of general on interventions? Because half of our kids, right, made enough to start closing that gap or to start making sure they don't have to be in special ed or anything like that. Do we have research on other interventions, or is that a common thing, or is that like really awesome for an intervention?
I think it's really awesome for the kids that are receiving this intervention because these are the students that are at the most risk of being identified or going through the process for identification for student services. One of the things that we are doing is those students that aren't making the kind of progress we're expecting or hoping for is we're providing Tier 3 services this year through ADSES. So our ADSES teachers at high schools and middle schools are not doing advisory classes. They are taking students during that time and doing a one-on-one intervention with those students that are most struggling. And this is they started doing that the last trimester of last year, and so this will be our first year doing that. And so we're hoping to see some movement with those kids that really just need that support to get going. Elementary does that also. They, if students are not meeting, are not making the kind of growth that they're expecting in the small group, they are going one-on-one with the students to provide that deeper intervention. So we're hoping to see that movement.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Do we have any measures, or have we reported measures of achievement based on students who have been within Osseo area schools for a certain length of time? So I know, certainly when we go out and we visit the sites and we talk to the principals, the achievement levels of students who are there first, second, third, that are there the entire time and not having that movement, and of course hearing the 50% here, and I know that's elsewhere in the district. I just want, when we do this reporting, the numbers are the numbers, but there's also what is the meaning behind them, or what does it mean for our solutions? And it would be interesting to be able to see that difference and understanding that correlation of the growth and the achievement of students who are able to stay within this school district.
So, yeah, when I first started in this role, I did an analysis that looked at that, student retention and length of retention in our district, and then their outcomes, and we found a lot higher achievement for students that were able to continue in their district for, I think it was 2 years was like the big win point, I guess. I think, don't quote me on that, but it's been 4 years, but I think that was what it was, and it did show a really statistically significant difference in being retained in our district for seeing those improved outcomes.
Jen, is that true, or was it a sort of range? Okay.
And we absolutely,
No, I understand.
we absolutely can dig into that again as we're.
Is that a turnkey process, or is that a very manual process?
Manual,
yeah. I just don't think it tells our story, right?
Mm-hmm.
That just kind of it's just not telling what our schools are doing or what our curriculum is doing, and if we don't have that understanding or can't show that, then it has a misperception of our district and our ability to help kids achieve their potential here.
Yeah, I can speak to, there's been isolated smaller studies too, Ms. Webster at Crestview asked me to look at that last year, and we did see that same trend of being in our district for a longer period of time, resulting in better outcomes. But there, and there's other schools that have asked for similar analyses that I can't pull up in my brain right now, but yeah. So I think that's a trend we've seen in the data, but it is a manual process right now. I'm working on that.
Yeah, I wonder if we can do a reoccurring sample size or something to better understand that, just to be able to tell our story a little bit better.
Absolutely, we can do that.
Any more questions for our team?
The other question I had is our baseline data, we got presented in October. And then at that point, did we change interventions to see if we would have growth with them? Or is it the same things we've been doing?
I think there's a yes and.
Well, it's just not very long because the data for this year was taken in March, right?
Right, yes.
So
Yes.
that's not a very long time to
Right.
do an intervention.
So we are in the process. We have gone through all of our elementary literacy interventions to, Jen has been doing a study on impact for each of our interventions. So we're isolating those interventions that have the highest impact, or the students have the highest growth in them, across and trying to address kind of the other conditions that play into that, like group size and length of time for the interventions and how long they're in the intervention. So we're looking at that. We have eliminated some interventions that did not have the impact that we had hoped they'd have over the last year. And so this year we feel like our elementary literacy interventions we've selected the ones that have the highest impact. So we're hoping to see growth from that.
There was kind of a two-round way of eliminating our interventions that we didn't feel were benefiting our students as much as they could. And one was looking at that analysis, and two was like going through with a group of stakeholders and looking at which reading interventions aligned with the science of reading. And so we've eliminated ones that did not align with that as well.
Do we have any data on teachers that have been letters trained?
We have numbers. We don't have data on like the performance or achievement levels. Last year was the first year that we had teachers opt into the training for letters, and they were at our Title I sites. And this year, all of our classroom teachers who are in pre-K through grade 3 will have volume 1 of letters training this year. So we're hoping, right? We look forward to seeing the achievement.
I'm excited for 2 years from now. I'm hoping it does what we need it to do.
And one last kind of thought on the Star Tribune article and the beating the odds. I think it perpetuates this is how you're expected to achieve, and I'm just kind of having a personal visceral reaction to that.
Yeah.
That you're beating the odds because you're doing better than the low expectations for you. So I just would it's interesting information, but I would be careful about how we use this and think about this or explain our results in this way.
Absolutely. And one of the things that we have been really careful to do is there used to be a measure called value added that had, race and all kinds of things put in it that the state used at one time. And we are not using that anymore. And one of the reasons we wouldn't look at that at an individual student level at all. But it does, I think, put some things into context. And I think because sometimes then we have schools that have higher rate of poverty. We also have that movement in the schools. I mean, there's some things that come along with it. So I think it's interesting data. It's one type of data. I agree with you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to our next item. We have Vice Chair assignments on MSBA legislative platform.
Yes. For the MSBA legislative platform, school board members and school districts can submit resolutions for the legislative platform that MSBA brings forward. And so part of our platform setting process is to have an awareness of what MSBA might be bringing forward. I know that in the past some of Some of our some of the items that we've considered for our legislative platform have been in part related to what ends up coming through on MSBA. We considered, do we want that in our legislative platform or not? So the delegate assembly, so school board members can be apply to be delegates, and then the delegate body votes on these submissions that come from individual board members or school boards. And that's how the Minnesota School Board Association legislative platform is set. Of course, ours is independent and separate from that. But we've never, since I've been on the board, I haven't seen us follow or consider a resolution that is with board approval to the MSBA. But I felt for this submission, rather than operate independently as a school board member, that it would be appropriate and fitting in my school board capacity to submit and bring it to this board, rather than do something on my own and submit it, which again is allowed and can be appropriate. So in this case, it's provided in your packet. There's multiple pieces to this resolution form, which includes the actual language that's being put into the resolution or into the legislative platform, a description of the problem, so why is this an issue that should be on the MSBA legislative platform, and then some supporting documentation. So this is in regard to the legislative updates from the most recent legislature that resulted in some conflict and interpretation between police departments and their role as SROs in schools. And so as a result of that legislation, a number of police departments have removed their SROs or put their SRO programs on hold. And that is what has happened in our district. So because of our previous support for our SRO contract, unanimously, I believe that this board supports our SRO program and has a concern as a school board about our SROs not being able to be in our schools because of this conflict. So this resolution, I'll just specifically focus in on the language under be it resolved, MSBA urges the legislature to. So what I wrote in this resolution submission said to we urge the legislature to ensure school districts, their staff and partners in school safety and security have clear guidelines for when and how they can intervene to de-escalate conflicts between students and others and protect students and others from harm. We call on the legislature to amend sections of Minnesota state statute to improve definitions and guidelines related to the use of force and to resolve dual and conflicting standards for first responders. So this resolution doesn't take particular stance, I guess, on the language. It's just advocating for clarity so that that conflict can be resolved, that hopefully our SROs can return to our sites. For this work session, the purpose is to answer any questions you may have about this. The intent is to bring it to the board meeting for a vote on whether or not we support this resolution. If it passes, then MSBA will take it up. If it doesn't pass it, then it will that will end there. But again, at this point, this was due on September 29th, so it cannot be resubmitted as an individual, which again, I would not do because I'm bringing it here for the board to consider. For reference, there are other districts who have passed a similar resolution, but have more specific language where they're asking for the legislation to be worded in certain ways. I don't think that's appropriate. Personally, my thought was it's not appropriate for a school board to tell the legislature what language they should have in legislation, but rather to ask for this to be resolved because of the issue at hand. So this will come to the board at the next board meeting, and I just wanted to have any discussion that might be necessary on this prior to the board meeting. Of course, there'll be the opportunity for discussion at the board meeting as well.
Does appreciate your work on this, Tanya, and taking this initiative, and I just fully support and agree with what you're doing. Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion?
Well, I just really wanted to say that I appreciate the approach that you took here by bringing it to us that we could have discussion, and that it would be a board decision to bring it forward. I think that alone signals, as one of the largest school districts in the state, having the board vote on it and to bring it forward gives a greater level of importance when MSBA does evaluate it, if it does get to that point. So I appreciate that. And it's very clear and concise. I don't have any questions about what's in it except for, oh, never mind, it says right there. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. Like, it was really clear. You're using Minnesota Department of Ed data, and there doesn't seem to be anything in here that's like opinion based. So I support it. I think it looks good, and it is my understanding that at least one of our schools, if not more, students have initiated their own petitions to bring back our SROs, and based on our data surveys, our kids have good relationships with our SROs, and they're very beloved figures within their school communities. And I think it's so important, especially for populations who have experienced negative interactions with officers, that they're able to have positive interactions. So I think overall it would be beneficial for our students if we were able to get this issue resolved.
Okay, so for, if there's no other questions or discussion, so for clarity, what would happen is if we did pass this, it would go to the MSBA Government Affairs Board, and they would reconcile the different ones that have been brought forward. And then whatever one they kind of recommend to the body, because they don't want to have two different versions of something, so they'll kind of put a recommendation, and then the delegate body will vote on it. And that's outside of this board, right? But just for clarity of what happens next. Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, we're on our last item for the evening. It's just a quick board calendar review. So as normal, in your folder is your 23-24 board meeting calendar. Just to highlight upcoming meetings and topics that we'll be having. On October 26th will be our regular board meeting, where we're going to have a great presentation on students connecting through international service. Will be shared with us that evening. On November 14th, we will need to have a special meeting to canvass the successful bond referendum election results. And followed by that, we'll have our normal work session with topics that could be subject to change, the world's best workforce results, long-range financial planning, budget parameters, and long-term facilities management. Any questions at all on the calendar, or anything you see you want added or needed, or?
Dr. Heil,
Yes.
for the students connecting through international service, will the actual students also be presenting to the board that night? Or will it be
I'm not sure. It may just be Scott and Tammy, but I can check on that though.
Yeah, I'm curious. They've gone to the different organizations that have supported that program, and they have the students actually present as well, which is part of the skill building in the program, and they just do a phenomenal job. But I also know that we've had a lot of different activity happening at our board meetings too. So, but it'd be great if the students.
We can get back to you.
Yeah.
They came to us once before.
Yeah, I think they.
The students, yeah.
It said originally on one of the draft agendas that there were students.
Okay.
But I don't know if that's still
I'm trying to
accurate.
think of the
It's
last
always
time.
more fun to hear from
It sure
them.
is.
Yeah.
No offense to the adults, but
Yeah, we like them a little more, Scott.
And their matching T-shirts. It was cool.
They're so good. They're so convincing. I'm actually going with them this year. So.
Oh yeah, you should. You should go.
Yeah, you should.
It's great.
Oh,
It's great.
you should go.
It was
Come
awesome.
on with me, Tanya.
I think the
No.
last time it was on, I think it was Candy and, I think it was,
Yes.
wasn't it?
Steve.
There were kids there.
What?
There were kids there. It was like one of our first years.
So we'll make sure.
Okay.
Just grab some kids.
I don't know if they presented, but there were kids there.
All right, any additions or add-ons?
Right.
All right, that'll do it.
All right.
So,
So this work session is adjourned at 7:49 PM.
nice.
Okay.